Hi everyone, thanks for stopping by. I'm returning to the old world. Today we have news about the setting of Warhammer the Old World. Exciting stuff. And an article has been published on the Warhammer community website. In this article it discusses some of the thought process around deciding when the game would be set, and then providing a little bit of detail around that setting. Before we launch into that, I think it's important just to pick up on perhaps the elephant in the room, which is the end times. It is explicitly said in this article that the end times remains canon, so we do have that element of dramatic irony, that whatever our characters perform on the tabletop, however our campaigns go, we know that the Great War of Chaos happens, that Magnus the Pious unites the Empire, and the end times come and the world is destroyed. And that is unavoidable. But now let's think about the setting itself. What is going on with the game? Well, we now know that the game will predate the Great War against Chaos by a few years. Quite a few years. And there had been a lot of speculation on the internet around exactly when the game would be set and whether actually it would be encompassing the Great War against Chaos. I'd previously suggested that maybe the game would be set several hundred years earlier than that. It looks like we're probably somewhere in between the two. I don't know the exact dates that the people mentioned in the article were floating around. Now the article then goes on to talk mostly about the state of the Empire. Rather than being a single faction, it's a number of entities which are driven by civil strife and intrigue. Lots of players for the imperial throne. 4 states get a particular mention. They are Marienburg, Osterland, Weekland, and Talabek. Now, all of this makes me think about the game Mordheim. For those of you who are perhaps long enough in the tooth to remember this, it was a skirmish game set in the battered town of Mordheim that was basically ruins. And you could play a number of different races in really their warbands searching for warpstone, weirdstone as it's most often referred to in the game. Now if you wanted to play as a human, you had fundamentally a choice of 3 normal factions. By normal, I'm excluding the Witch Hunter and Sisters of Sigmar. We're looking at just normal people sponsored by their local lord or what have you. You could play as Riekland, Marienburg, or Middenheim. And each of those factions had a different flavour. They were good at different things, weaker at different things. So whilst technically you're playing an Imperial warband, you're playing one with its very much its own flavour. And this is what looks like is going to happen with Warhammer the Old World. They've specifically called out these 4 factions that make up the Imperial set, if you like. Marienburg, ruled by the merchant lords, lots of money floating around, a state that has a history of being part of the Empire and seceding. You have Osterland, very Ulrichian, so that ties into perhaps the Middenheim warbands of Mordheim, if you're looking to continue that crossover. Now, I do remember that many years ago there were rules for having Ulrichian armies for your Empire forces, different compositions of troops, a bit more close combat orientated than perhaps a force that might be more closely associated with Nuln, for example. So some different flavour there, lots of wolf cloaks and big hammers, big beards floating around. Then you've got Reikland, which is the seat of the Emperor, and perhaps closer to the classic Empire we all know and love. The final one, Talabek, is mentioned as being the most culturally diverse of the factions. I think that's quite interesting. Now this says to me, and I'm purely speculating at this point, Talabek is there to give you the play however you want faction. If you want to play Empire and you don't want to be straitjacketed by a specific characteristic or set of characteristics, then Talabek is for you. And it might also be the best option or the most sensible option, who knows. Again, purely speculating. If you don't want to play as in one of the major factions, but maybe you're setting up your own headcanon where some local lord is taking advantage of the political situation and the general chaos in order to make a name for themselves and really further their own agenda, maybe even trying to set themselves on the throne as emperor. All food for thought. There's also a mention in the article of greenskins and beastmen, so the classic terrors of the forest, the things that mothers tell their children around to scare them into obedience. And there's an explicit statement that there are lots of tales to tell. So it sounds like to me that there is going to be hopefully a bit of an emphasis on the narrative and a lot of consideration around the storyline of what's going on. As a more narrative gamer, that really interests me a lot, and I appreciate that it sounds like we're going to get a number of options to how we play Empire armies. Well, there won't be an Empire army, insert air quotes here. There'll be armies with an Imperial flavour, but there'll be lots of flavours to be tried, lots of variety available to us. As a first news drop for 2023, I think this is quite interesting. There's some clearly a lot of thought be going into the background and doing something that'll make the game interesting. I hope this theme carries on, and we'll watch, I'm sure, with bated breath. In the meantime, thank you very much for stopping by. If you'd like to hear my thoughts on other bits of news as it's released, do consider subscribing. Apart from that, have a great day. This is Return to the Old World.